We're going to talk a little bit of election year politics here. When you look at what's gone on in the Republican primary with the presumptive nomination of Donald Trump, a lot of people have said that he's run a campaign based on fear and racism. When you see what Trump has done in this campaign, the way that he has been able to bring Republicans behind him, what are your thoughts about where this country is heading?
There are two Republican parties, and they formed a joint venture in 1964. And most people tend to not remember the merger. You had your Jefferson-Davis Democrats, slave-holding, segregationist Democrats in the South, supported states' rights, who denied access to public accommodations and the right to vote, and the whole range of racial policies. When we finally got public accommodation in 64, the Jefferson-Davis Democrats joined the Goldwater Reagan Republicans. They changed parties, but not character. And Trump tapped into that wing of the Republican Party, which still is a states' rights party. This is the biggest region, the poorest people still fighting against security for its people. South Carolina, where I'm from, state, 4 million people, 1 million in poverty. 1 million people don't have health insurance, Medicaid eligible. 250,000 have no health insurance. The $7 billion budget, they turned down $14 billion in affordable health care. Right. Utterly irrational. The hospital the governor was born in closed down. They would not accept affordable health care. Well, that's 60,000 jobs and lives lost. She's from Bamberg, South Carolina. And people must drive 50 miles from Bamberg to Orangeburg if they break a leg. Well, from Virginia around to Texas, we saw that happen, except Kentucky, really. Right. And maybe Louisiana last year. We just sick people rejecting affordable health care. So we don't want any federal money. They accept federal money for interstate highways, federal money for airports and seaports, federal money to subsidize universities, federal money to subsidize the hospitals, for the military bases, for the penitentiaries, but not for affordable health care. It's utterly irrational. That wing of the party have this anti-Obama mania, where people really want affordable health care, but don't want Obamacare. There's black folks who want omelet but don't want eggs.
Is that because of race? Is that a statement about?
I don't know why they like that kind of egg sandwich, omelet without eggs. I'm not sure what's wrong with them. It just doesn't seem right to me. But the same people turn down highway construction, fast rail. You could up and down the coastline of from Louisville to Cincinnati to Cleveland. You could build a whole regional development where Americans make the steel, lay the rail, build the trains, connect cities and towns, and they rejected that too. The obsession was defeat Obama, not supply accessible rail and jobs, not supply accessible health care, but defeat him. Well, they defeated him and they defeated the poor people at the same time. They defeated the bills. They didn't defeat President Obama. They defeated health care. They defeated transportation. And so that has been an ugly season. And I've known Trump to be I know him as kind of negotiating business type guy, but then the idea that President Obama was not born here, the so-called birther movement, that was trying to discredit him. Well, that lost. But a lot of time was spent arousing the same anti-Obama Southern base against him. And then the congressman from South Carolina called him a liar in the will of the Congress. He was not punished by the Republican Party. He went back home and raised $3 million for having bad manners. Then he went and he attacked the Mexicans. Well, we're going to make them build a wall. We share 2,000 miles of border with Mexico. They are our security line on the south. If ISIS were in Mexico, for example, we couldn't survive the hits. We need Mexico for security, if no other reason. If we can have security zone in Europe, why not on our own hemisphere? And Mexico, South Central Latin America, 2/3 of our hemisphere speak Spanish. English is a minority language in our hemisphere, so we need Mexico. but to turn Americans against Mexicans is kind of mean. In Chicago, Nabisco, which makes Oreo cookies and saltine crackers, transferring 600 jobs to pay $30 an hour to Salinas, Mexico, which pay $1 an hour. The Mexicans did not take jobs from us. We took jobs to them to work those workers at low wages and undermine American workers. And so to turn Americans against Mexicans and to suggest 15 million people being deported, not just Mexicans, the deportation would affect people on college
on visas.
On visas, yes. It would affect Africans and Europeans. And people cheered the idea of that, the idea of banish the refugees. Well, it was our attack in Iraq and then our attack in Libya that opened up the immigrant crisis. We drove people out of their homes by making weapons available to the enemies of the people and ourselves. And then, of course, this last week, this idea about a federal judge could not judge because he's Mexican. That suggests a woman cannot judge a man because a woman is a woman, a black can't judge white. Everything about that's polluted and convoluted. And you see Republicans now protesting it, not because they so much disagree as they are embarrassed. What is the line? Is it the birther movement? Is it the president's a liar? Is it cut affordable health care? Is it cut affordable, reasonable access to transportation? Is it affirmative action? Is it access to voting? What is the line for this kind of retarded behavior? We are a better nation today than we were 50 years ago because we've torn down walls and built bridges. You couldn't have University of Kentucky couldn't be recruiting black players in the great Louisville, Kentucky game behind the cotton curtain. You couldn't have young brands of KFC here behind the cotton curtain. You couldn't have South Carolina, the number one producer of tires, behind the cotton curtain. You can have the Carolina Panthers and Atlanta Falcons behind the cotton curtain. We made a complete new South by bringing down walls and building bridges. Now, what's unfinished is not just the race gap, but the gap between the haves and the have-nots. I've challenged Democrats to spend more time in Appalachia. Arguably, the hardest working, most risk-taking workers in America are coal miners. These workers go 2 and 3 miles beneath the earth every day. A coal miner dies every 6 hours from black lung disease today. And yet somehow we leave them unprotected. Hard-working poor people, they're the first to go to war, first to die and the last to be treated, so that there's a chance now for us to really look at a forward, inclusive agenda, everybody in, nobody out agenda.
What do the Democrats need to do now? We've got the situation set up now where Hillary Clinton is the presumptive nominee. She's been declared the nominee by the Associated Press and other news organizations. Bernie Sanders still in the race.
She's presumptive nominee by the votes and the delegates. Thank you, sir. Keep going.
President Obama today came out and endorsed her.
That helps.
Does Bernie Sanders need to get out of the way now and try to unite the party, or is there still a role for him?
No, he need not get out of the way. He has aroused the consciousness of too many people. The tent must expand and make room for him. The issues he raised, he lost the campaign, but the crusade is not over. The idea of student loan debt being greater than credit card debt, that's not over.
Right.
The idea that we took the roof off of banks and the floor from beneath poor people, and so you got 9 million homeowners who lost their homes and went from middle class to poverty. We bailed out the banks, not locked the lending and reinvestment, and so bankster behavior has hurt people. That is not going away. The need for an even broader comprehensive health care policy. After all, 30 million people are not cared for even with affordable health care. The fact that many people are the working poor. Most poor people are not on welfare. And they're not black, and they're not brown. They're white, they're female, they're young, they work every day, and still cannot make a living wage in the new service industry.
Right.
The issues he raised, which aroused so much consciousness, will not go away. And I would argue that if we expand the party and make room for him, somebody said he represents the left wing, well, it take 2 wings to fly. I had the same challenge in 1988
Right.
to expand the party, and it looks like he has met with President Obama. I doubt that President Obama would have met with him yesterday and endorsed Hillary today without having discussed with him in some measure. I think that the winner must have dignity, grace. The loser must be afforded dignity. He must have a real place in the convention, a real place in plaques on the platform, a real place in Democrat National Committee representation. There are too many people he brought in to be left in the margins. His campaign's been too good and brought in too many people to do other things except include. Inclusion leads to growth. There's growth, everybody wins.
Should he be the vice presidential candidate?
I don't know whether his interest is that or not. That usually is the decision made by the candidate. In the case of Obama, after a very tight race with Hillary Clinton, Hillary's interesting enough. She won by 84 rules. She would have won. When I ran in 84, we had about 400 delegates, but we put on 2 million new voters. And I found out what was happening was some winner take all. If I get 47, you get 49, you get 100. I thought that was bad math. We challenged that math. So we got something called from winner take all to proportionality. And so by 88, if I got 47%, you got 49%, I get that many delegates. Proportionality.
Right.
So I went from 400 delegates to 1,200 delegates with only $18 million. It's a very cost-efficient campaign.
Right.
So by the 84 rule, she would have won because she won California, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Texas, and New Jersey, and New York.
All the big states.
On the winner take all.
Yeah.
But on the proportionality, President Barack won in 84, in 08. So the democratizing the democracy helped him win. And so now we see the need, and we chose to keep expanding and rather than split the party. And I think he's made the same judgment to expand rather than split. And I'm convinced that Hillary has enough negotiating skills and mathematics to count the group in. And those who stand to make a choice between Trump or Hillary staying home must understand in 1960, at a very tight convention, Kennedy chose Johnson, and they won by 113,000 votes, less than one vote per precinct. In 68, Johnson and Humphrey dallied around too long, and there was a gap there, and Nixon eased in the gap. And then in Clinton and Carter and Kennedy, they couldn't quite get together, and Reagan eased in the gap. So if in this situation, if they hang around too long, pouting in their anger and in their fear and their frustration, Trump could ease in the gap. I think they intend to close that gap and give people a real choice between directions, not so much about male versus female, but about direction.
One word answer from you, if we can do that. Who's the next president of the United States?
Well, there's a reasonable chance it will be Hillary Clinton. A reasonable chance because the number of people that have been insulted by this the Republican Party, the party itself is not certain on its nominee, even though it has the most delegates. The two Republican parties are in tension. The Southern Jefferson Davis Republican wing is in real tension with the Northern wing of itself. And because of that splitting, and then there is now the frustration over talking about the Mexican judge and the racial implications of that. The Republican Party has been weakened by an ideological contradiction within its ranks. And on the other hand, Hillary has run a solid but tough campaign. And if the campaign is focused on direction and not on branding people in these ugly ways, I hope it's a campaign about health care policy and education policy and wages and affordable education and how to end unnecessary wars, environmental security, and voting rights security. If the campaign is fought on the issues that matter to American people the most, then Hillary will probably win. And we don't know who will win a campaign of attack and counterattack. And I hope she has the strength to resist any counterattack. And I hope that Mr. Trump will choose to argue the Republican point of view and not argue the point of view of a personal desecration. It seems to work for him in the primary. It's not likely to work in the general election. I say in closing, as I think about all these being here today, the issues he fought for, he was not controversial. Kentucky was controversial. The laws were controversial. Taking better care of the horses and the children, that's controversial. Pay taxes and can't vote, that's controversial. Right. Black soldiers sitting behind lots of POWs on American military bases, that's controversial. Black money can't rent a hotel room or buy a hamburger. The society was controversial. He was maladjusted, and he chose to fight until somebody heard him. If you have a size 10 foot and a size 8 shoe, you don't have a foot problem, you have a shoe problem. He expanded the shoe, and now all of us feel better about ourselves. We feel better about him, but the price he had to pay was to express the pain of being in a congested situation. And I think that Louisville has him as their homeboy. They have him as the son of their Joe and have him as a model. Let's talk about how you relate to Muslims and Christians and Jews and Buddhists and black and white. He is a great symbol of the ecumenical, multicultural spirit that must identify the new Louisville and the new Kentucky. When I see Kentucky playing the big basketball game, and you know, on the floor you have players black and white. It's all about blue and white, not black and white. And the reason we do so well in the athletic field, or even in the Kentucky Derby, you don't quite know who's going to win the Kentucky Derby. You may have your favorites. You don't know who's going to win. The Kentucky plays Louisville. But you accept the outcome. You accept the outcome because whenever the playing field is even and the rules are public, the goals are clear, the referee's fairness score is transparent, you can accept the outcome. And those are the rules by which we should play life's game.
Okay. Reverend Jackson, thank you so much for joining us here at the Courier-Journal today. It's been a pleasure. And
y'all got me intimidated.
Again, I'm Joe Gerth with the Courier-Journal, courierjournal.com. Thank you for joining us.